Hi, I'm Mark Boccuzzi, co-founder and executive director of the Windbridge Research Center, where we study dying, death, and what comes next. Today, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak to Liz Entin. Liz is the founder and author of What the Fuck Just Happened? All about the afterlife, none of the woo. She also runs social media for the nonprofit organization, the Forever Family Foundation. After a loss, Liz took a shot in the dark and decided to see if there was any evidence of an afterlife. And she was blown away by what she discovered. So Liz has also penned a number of online articles, including What Happened When I, a Sciencey Skeptic, Got a Mediumship Reading to Help Manage Grief. This is an article we actually linked from our website, and we think it's pretty interesting. So thank you, Liz, for being here today. I'm excited to speak with you. Welcome.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited too.
First off, I want to express my condolences for the loss of your father. He passed away in 2015. Is that correct?
Yes, he did. And that was obviously devastating. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So that event set you on a particular path. Can you talk to me a little bit about what happened and how you ended up going down this road of trying to understand mediums and mediumship in the afterlife?
Oh, sure. So the way I was raised, culturally Jewish, but an afterlife was, I guess, about as realistic as Santa Claus. It was just, a non-issue. We never talked about it, never thought about it. And so my very first thought when my dad got really sick and it was clear he wasn't going to get better was, and I didn't think it was necessarily realistic, but was it possible to turn back time in any way, shape, or form? From there, I started to read a lot about Einstein's theories of time and relativity, and it just became very clear to me that things that had been assumed to be set and factual and known were not. And then my very next thought was, if our brain neurons create consciousness, and this happened to create me once, well, why couldn't that happen again? I'd be a different person. It would, I guess, I knew that was kind of like reincarnation, and I didn't think it'd be karma-based, just dumb luck of neurons creating another experience that I got to experience as a me, although a completely different me, which when the only other alternative is complete obliteration, I thought that sounded pretty good. Googled that. Jim Tucker, Ian Stevenson, Division of Perceptual Studies at UVA, started reading. Pretty quickly, I found Dr. Julie Beischel's books, and I was just like, what is this? This is logical. If this is true and the data and claims you guys are making is accurate, this is the most, just beyond the most profound, mind-blowing thing that could ever possibly happen. And not only did it help me not feel just so hopeless, it was just, there really aren't words for that level of shock.
When you started to talk about your interest in these topics, or did you talk about your interest in these topics with friends and family, and what kind of reaction were you getting?
Only to my mom. She was kind and sympathetic and thought I was basically just making things up to survive. She thought it was there, but she thought I was basically believing a bunch of bullshit. And she kind of was very worried about me, I guess, that as soon as I started to go a little deeper, I would discover it was all fake and just wouldn't be able to really recover from that.
You've since had mediumship readings, or at least a mediumship reading. How many readings have you had at this point?
If you count group readings, probably like 60.
Wow.
Yeah. Which
yeah, go ahead. Talk a little bit about that if you would.
They're part of Forever Family Foundation, and I'm going to events, and that's part of it. But mainly, I just feel like I'm watching normal human beings defy the laws of the universe right in front of me. I guess it would be similar to if I had access to go watch, Dr. Lisa Randall and Brian Greene examining string theory up close. I'm watching these normal people defy the laws of the universe in front of my face, and I just can't get past that. I think there's some part of me that's always like, no, did that really happen? However much evidence I get, it's just, I kind of compare it to, imagine if you woke up even take away the fact that you're in the darkest, most traumatized, sad place in your life, but you wake up and you're just like, I've never found this little hidden cave. And you walk in and there's a bunch of new colors that you've never seen. No base colors, no versions of base colors, just completely new colors, and matter is behaving differently. That's pretty much what I feel like every time I see a good medium reading. And I feel like I have to keep seeing more. It's so fascinating.
But it sounds like you're still skeptical of the phenomena itself.
I don't know exactly. I'm trying to think how best to explain it. I think there's a preponderance of evidence. I think it's the most astounding, worldview changing thing I've ever seen. The more I see of it, the more and more I can't really come up with any quote unquote normal explanations. But can I say without a doubt, factually, I know it leads to an afterlife? I mean, I don't. I know there's something. I really hope it's an afterlife. I think it's a really, which is kind of shocking to say, logical conclusion. But the only thing I feel I know I can say is it's showing the laws of the universe are different than we perceive with our five senses. And we're raised to believe, at least, people raised in a materialist culture are raised to believe. And I kind of can't stop watching it. I'm just like, this is fascinating.
That's really interesting to me that you're having this hesitation about the acknowledgement of an actual afterlife, given all the evidence that you've seen. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if you have any sense of what it would be required, either from a mediumship reading or a personal experience. What would be required for you to take that last leap? Like, do you have any sense of what that might look like?
Oh, I wonder that a lot. And I finally realized, which actually made me feel better about how strong the evidence is. I don't think there's anything that could be 100%. I've tried to think what would be the most, I guess they say if you have a personal NDE yourself. So I guess I can't rule that out. But I think there's a part of me that would always think, well, this still could be dying neurons of a brain. And maybe they continue after bodily death for like a day. If, my dad came in front of me, sat in front of me himself, and told me something that my mom knew that I didn't, I think that would be really, really strong. But everything can still be explained by super psi. That could have been something my mom told me when I was 4 that I don't remember. And then I had this hallucination because I needed to. I think it's highly, highly, highly likely that there is an afterlife. I think something like that would make it even more so. But I think there's always going to be that 2% that just, can I say it's 100% fact? I don't know if I ever could, but I think I'm at this point probably 90% convinced. And that would maybe send me to 95, maybe even 99. But I don't know if we ever can be 100%.
But this is a personal interest of mine of like, what would it take to change people's minds, right? Like if I could run the experiment that makes sense, right? That's valid within the scope of reported phenomena and have good methodology, it still wouldn't convince people. I bet that's kind of depressing actually, when I say it out loud.
Yeah, except I think taking someone like me and getting them from 0.01% to 95% is that's pretty impressive. And that does a lot.
How did all this new information and how did these readings, how did this impact your feelings about your father's passing?
Oh my God, I think it was transformative. It just, I think one of the hardest things about grief it's just kind of like the obliteration of all hope. I never quite thought of it that way until this moment, but you just have no hope you're ever going to see them again. And then you have no hope for the future because it's just going to be death after death, including yourself. And just, that's it, nothing more. So I think to have a different perception of that, it's almost the way people say with NDEs, you can't put into words. It's hard to put the level into words. It just changed everything. It gave me hope. It gave me joy. Just about not only seeing him again, which was obviously really, really wonderful, but just a completely different view on the human experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So you're writing a book and you're doing a podcast and you're writing articles. In light of all this information and your clear transformation, has there been any change in the attitudes of the people closest to you? You mentioned your mother. I don't know about any of your other friends or your peer group that may have been going through this process with you or watching you go through this process. How have they responded now to the shift?
I think my mom, she was the hardest. Well, it's kind of a few part story. My mom and peer group are kind of fall into two very different things. My mom, she works with neuroscientists. She's a therapist. If a neuroscientist doesn't believe it, it's not true. She asked one once about NDEs. He laughed. And I mean, we know kind of what neuroscientists tend to think about it. And he's brilliant in many ways, but said it was complete illusion of the brain. And so that was her thought. She's changed her mind. She says she can't go far with it. I'll start talking too much and she'll say, oh, this is getting too weird, enough. But she thinks there's something really going on. And she just says she can't say what, but she's pretty blown away by what I've seen. My peer group, it took me a long time to come out to them about this. I'm like, they're going to think I lost my mind. But I mean, people have been a lot more open, a lot more curious, and a lot less judgmental than I was expecting. I was expecting people to think, kind of just dismiss me as having gone off the deep end into this little kind of very woo fantasy world. And that hasn't been the response at all. I mean, different people, quote unquote, believe it more than others. Some are saying, oh yeah, I always thought that. And some are really curious, but I haven't gotten any bad reactions, at least not to my face. And a lot of people that were more in an extended network, like I do a lot with startups, so I'm in a lot of entrepreneur groups. I mean, people hearing what I'm doing and reaching out and saying, oh, I had a loss. This is amazing. I'd love to hear why you think this. Or I'm thinking of trying a medium. Do you have one I should go to? And give me any tips for how I reach out to them and keep it evidential. And I've ended up making a lot of new friends too because of this.
I'm very pleased to hear that. I find that really encouraging. Talked about the Division of Perceptual Studies as part of the University of Virginia. They've studied near-death experiences and reincarnation over the years. There's organizations like the Forever Family Foundation. They run programs. They hold retreats. They have a program where they test and try to certify mediums, and they have a pool of mediums that they recommend. They have a radio program, and also, so you found that organization to be helpful in your journey, and then you eventually started volunteering for them. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, I found out about them trying to volunteer. So I found Laura Lynn Jackson was one of the first two mediums I found, which is pretty lucky. I found her because of you guys. She has a very long wait list, so I'm still on the wait list, but I saw she had events. So I went to the events. I was incredibly awkward. I was kind of like looking under chairs to see for recording devices. I wouldn't talk to any of the other guests because I was convinced they were plants that she sent, just basically raised my hand every other second with like another science-based question about why doesn't Stephen Hawking believe this? But she was very kind and patient. I'd already read a lot of Dr. Beishel's work and looked at the studies on your sites. And I went in with the mindset again that if this is true and your data is accurate, this is the most profound thing. So I was like, I basically have to see what's going on behind the scenes. So I emailed Laura right after and was like, hi, I was the skeptical one asking annoying, obnoxious questions every 2 minutes. And I would love to volunteer for a place that's science-minded, similar to Windbridge, but has to be in New York or LA. And she said, try Forever Family Foundation. I'd heard of them, but I didn't know much. So then I went onto their website. I saw the scientists who were on the board and I was like, these are all the people I'm reading and this is amazing. So I reached out about volunteering and that's how I got in.
That's great. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Forever Family. You said that you did read our research and you went to our website and you looked at our stuff. Did you find that helpful?
Yeah, well, at the same time I was reading this, I started classes at the Rhine, including 8 studies in parapsychology.
So sorry, when you say the Rhine, you mean the Rhine Research Center in Durham, North Carolina?
Yes.
And you're taking part in the education programs that they have there.
Yes, with
Okay.
Lloyd Auerbach and John Kruth.
Right.
So I'm reading, Dr. Beishel's books, the studies you guys have, the studies that they're providing us at the Rhine. I think what I loved about it, what was so helpful was it was fact and the language used, it wasn't, and I felt an angel of light as my dad, came down through the mediums as they talked with him. It was.
I think Dr. Beischel would be hard pressed to use the term "angel of light" to describe
exactly. And I had assumed before I found you guys that's how this stuff is written, and I can't take any of that seriously. And you guys were speaking the same exact way any database, peer-reviewed study, like one on a new medical drug would speak. It was just fact. It was all the, for lack of a better word, all the bullshit or all the interpretive language based on belief was eliminated. And it was very much X happened. Yes, we know it's not supposed to happen, but it did. And it happened again, and it happened again, and it happened again. And it was just, and then that made me open to finding a medium, because along with finding Laura, I also found one at that time to get a private reading. And she just, there in front of me, it was happening. And if I hadn't read everything by you guys, I don't think I would have ever even considered it. And then it was backing it up, which, I kept wanting to go further, but there's just no frills in the way you guys present information. I think for me, I found that very emotionally comforting and very just undeniable.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. That helps a lot. It's part of our mission to do research and then make those research findings available. And one of the things we strive to do is to tailor our content so people that are science-minded, we can give them the papers, right? And they can read the actual papers, the peer-reviewed published papers. But for other people, we try to create fact sheets and videos and things like that, so it's a little bit more accessible, so we don't rely so much on the science terminology, but we can get the facts across. And then for some studies, for example, if we're dealing with things that are more clinical, we'll actually have them presented by a clinician who can speak the clinical language. It's really nice to hear that you were able to find your niche in our content mix that spoke to you. And I think that's really wonderful feedback, and I appreciate that. So thank you. I'm glad it was helpful.
It was transformative. And for me, I liked reading all. I liked that things were peer reviewed. That made me so much more able to take it seriously. And I read everything from the full science ones to the, as you were saying, the ones made a little more accessible, and just all of that. The tone was so serious and respectable.
It's funny. We often get criticized because we are a little too clinical and we don't offer enough stories, personal stories. So thank you for that feedback. So there's a bunch of people that are going to watch this that are interested in this topic. What's the takeaway? What do you think is the big takeaway?
Often I'm asked, what is the one thing that changed your mind? The vast, vast body of evidence from the research done by you guys at Windbridge to NDEs and cases of kids with past life memories done by Doctors Tucker and Stevenson, all the way to all the anecdotal evidence coming in from millions of people that has a consistency to my own personal experiences with mediums, as well as getting to know piles of these mediums personally. When you know people personally, you just can't dismiss them as either con artists or delusional. And when you just put this all together, you see the laws of the universe defied every single day. It's just such a vast body of evidence that it's absolutely inexplicable by our current understanding of how the universe works.
Liz, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's always great to chat with you. If people are interested and want to learn more about Liz's book and her upcoming podcast and to get in touch with her, they can find her online at wtfjusthappened.net. Again, Liz, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.